Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome back to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We are in week 10. We've hit double digits. Plenty to talk about this week. A lot of playoff implications. We have more coaches fired. We have 4 of the 6 remaining undefeated teams in play this weekend. And we're going to break it all down conference by conference with the best in the business. Let's get the stars of the show in here. And I will say I am boots on ground in the Big Apple. We'll be on network later tonight. So I got Emory Hunt here with me. I got Mike McClure to help me out as we get through this. Emory, how are we feeling about this slate?
Feeling good, man. But I'm also feeling good about the Harmony Christian Academy Mavericks. I spoke with that class this morning, the sports journalism classroom. They were outstanding. Miss Charday did a fantastic job getting those guys together. That's the basketball team right there, guys. I know they're locked in watching us on their lunch break. So shout out to those guys for tuning in.
You would make a fabulous coach of any sport here, Emory. Seeing that picture, that looked right. Like, I think you really belong to be a coach in any form or fashion. Mike, maybe we're not visiting schools, but how do we feel about betting on schools this weekend?
I always feel great about betting on college football, Kens. Look, you always have big games, whether or not they have little ranked numbers in front of them or not. There's always opportunity for excellent football games. So I actually like this slate quite a bit this week.
Yeah, a lot of rivalries as well. We got Florida, Georgia. We got Army, Air Force, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Boston College, Fresno State, Boise State. We're going to start just getting right into it. We're going to start with the ACC to warm ourselves up here. So let's get into some bets. We have UNC headed to Syracuse. That line is 2.5. Syracuse favored at home, over under 45.5. Now, UNC 0-5 versus Power 4 teams this season so far. Average margin of defeat there, 18 points. So take that for what you will. Coming off a 17-16 heartbreaker to number 16 Virginia. You have Syracuse coming off that 41-16 loss at Georgia Tech. The Fighting Emory Hunts here. Emory, how are we going to attack this ACC game?
You know what? I found that it was rather refreshing to see the pride still mattered in football. And North Carolina stepped up big last week and covered the spread versus Virginia, but played really well. Should have won that game. I thought he was going to get in, but at the end of the day, they didn't. And I do think we'll see them play inspired football once again against Syracuse, who is sort of struggling at quarterback. So I'd like the defense of North Carolina, especially what they've shown the last 2 games. So I will take them plus the points here against the Orange.
Emory, or excuse me, Mike, you feeling the same way on that?
I'm going to lean to the Syracuse side for just a couple reasons here, guys. First of all, I think the number is about right. I make it 3, but the fact that I'm not having to lay the full 3, that's appealing to me on the Syracuse side. It's also a little bit of a shorter week playing this game on Friday night on the road. When you look at Carolina, it was nice to see them put up a fight in that game. Ultimately, they did come up short once again, but both teams having dropped 4 in a row, I like Syracuse in this particular spot. And the reason for it is you look at what Syracuse has just played in terms of schedule. It's about as tough as it gets in this conference, right? They're just coming off of at Georgia Tech, Pitt, at SMU, Duke, at Clemson. Like, those are their last 5 games that they have played. This is a step down in competition for them. I know that the season isn't necessarily gone the way they want, but at less than a field goal at Syracuse, that's where I would lean.
Yeah, that's the problem. This isn't going to be like me putting the house on this game. I think it would be worth it to buy the 3 points if you want to go UNC. I'd probably buy it for UNC plus the 3. I just don't think Syracuse has looked that insane to me. And you look at UNC, who's playing better. I know the bar was in the basement, but they are playing better as of late. So tough spread here, tough line. I think it'd be worth it to buy and get the plus 3 insurance if you're on that UNC side. Let's move to a little more exciting game here in the ACC. Number 10, Miami in action. 12.5-point favorites headed to SMU. Over under is 50.5. So a lot of points anticipated here. This is the second meeting all time and first as conference opponents here. SMU won 7-3 at Miami in 1965. That was the last time we see them come together. The interesting thing is this is the first time, guys, Miami is leaving the state of Florida. All of their away games have been in the state of Florida. This will be their first time venturing out of there. SMU 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 versus top 10 teams, and they are 0-3 against the spread in those last 3 games. So, Mike, does this make you want to lean a certain side here?
Yeah, I've got to lean to SMU, considering the location of the game. And if you remember this team, yes, they actually lost last week in that low scoring affair. I still think they're a team that's not quite properly rated. They're a team that easily could have a much better record on the season. I think that they've got the ability to slow Miami just enough here. I set the line on this game at 8.5. The fact that you're through a lot of those key numbers, particularly 10 and 11, to me, I think this game is relatively competitive. I think Miami definitely walks away with the win, but I don't think they're winning by multiple touchdowns here. So give me SMU with the points, particularly if you're still catching 12.5.
Yeah, this is a massive spread. The look ahead line for this was 2.5. I don't think it should be 2.5, but 12.5 is certainly an insane number to me. I look at this Miami team and they've played a combined 2 football games worth of pretty average ACC football, like mid-tier ACC football. You talk about the back half versus FSU, the full game versus Louisville, the first half versus Stanford. Like, we haven't seen this insanely dominant football from Miami. So 12.5 for the first time leaving the state of Florida, I just think might not be worth it. I would lay with SMU here. I don't think they're the best team in America by any means, but I do think there's a lot of potential. Like Mike said, they absolutely should have won that game last week. So I expect them to fight here. Give me the 12.5. Emory, I see you feel very similarly with us.
When SMU joined the ACC, this was the game I was looking for. This is the bag bowl. Who got it better? Who has it bigger? Are you going to take oil money with SMU, or are you going to take Escobar money with Miami? So this is where we find out, right? Early in the week on Monday, I was on the show, and this was minus 10.5, and I said, hey, I trust this number specifically for Miami. But now that I see it's up to 12.5, I'm going to take SMU plus the points here. SMU will keep this one close. This is a landmark game for SMU in conference, but also another big statement game for them. And I think they looked ahead last week, which is why they lost. They're going to take all their frustration out in this one and give them a full game. So I will take SMU plus 12.5 in this matchup of money.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, this is a betting show, but the playoff implications here, this could kill Miami's at-large chance if they lose this game. I know they are projected to win this game. It's a 12.5-point spread. Crazier things have happened here. So I would think this is a very, very big game for Miami, just in the terms of if they don't make that conference championship, needing the at-large points when SMU is seen as this poor team. If you only beat them by 3 points, it really doesn't look good for the style portion of trying to get an at-large bid. So that's just food for thought there. All right, when we get back, we're going to hit the Big Ten. Nice little warm up here. But if you want more bets from the team, from Emory, from Mike, and the company, you can go to SportsLine and you can use the code WINNERS to get 60% off an annual plan. Again, that is promo code WINNERS, 60% off across all sports, college football, NFL, MLB, for what we have left and more. And that's all you need to do. When we return, we are hitting the Big Ten here. We have some big games. We got number 1, Ohio State, number 2, Indiana. Lots to discuss, a lot to unpack after this. Welcome back to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. Mackenzie Brooks here, Emory Hunt, Mike McClure, making our way through the Power Four conferences with the best bets, best marquee matchups, and what should have been quite the marquee matchup, one would think, in the summer. Penn State headed to number 1 Ohio State, and now we have Ohio State 20.5-point favorites at home versus the Nittany Lions, over under 43.5. We do not have to, go down the rabbit hole of Penn State, but for what it is worth, Penn State is 1-6 against the spread so far this season, while Ohio State is 6-1. But what we will say is that Penn State is 1-0 against the spread under Mr. Terry Smith, so shout out there. This is the worst 7-game start by a preseason AP top 2 team ever. With that said, let's really make some money on this here. Again, a very, very large spread, one of the biggest we've seen in the past 30 years for Penn State. Emory, do you think they can cover this spread?
Nope, not a chance. And the sad part is it's going to be because of their offense. The defense will keep them competitive. It'll keep them from getting the doors blown off by Ohio State, who's starting to find its stride offensively with Julian Sain and everyone else around that offense, Jeremiah Smith and company. Even Bo Jackson starting to really run the football rather well. But the Penn State offense is the concern here. And therefore, if they're not going to be able to take advantage of the added possessions the defense will give them because they're putting up a fight early on, then all Ohio State will do is just wait the course and blow them out in the second half. So I can see them covering the spread completely. So lay the points with the Buckeyes.
See, I think they cover the spread too, but I could see this being like a 35-7 game. And if that's the situation, we're actually still hitting this under. So I might be taking the under route here just because we don't know what we're getting from an interim head coach here. We don't know if Ohio State really cares to put up style points considering the situation they're in. But again, even in that worst case scenario, in my opinion, which is like a 35-7, the fact that we can probably still sneak under feels like a safer play to me. I would like the first half under too, as these teams feel each other out, as Penn State tries to figure out what on earth their game plan is. So under would be the play for me, but kind of coincides with that spread there. Mike, do you feel confident in the Buckeyes here?
I feel confident they win the game as far as covering the spread. I think it could potentially be close. I almost brought you the Penn State team total under 10.5. I think that if they score more than 10.5, there's a chance that they can score or that they can cover in this spot. But to me, Ohio State is just too good on both sides of the ball here. It's a lost season for Penn State. I think this is a spot, though, where Ohio State wants to kind of kick them while they're down, so to speak. I think they want to run the score up here. I think they want to cover the spread. So while it's not going to make my card, there's just no way that I can back Penn State. I would probably need 27.5 to back Penn State at this particular spot overall. So for me, it's Ohio State or Penn State under 10.5 on their team total.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Obviously, always a tough game to handicap. We don't exactly know what we're going to get from Penn State for the rest of the season, but should be an interesting game nonetheless. Let's move on here to number 2, Indiana. Another big spread, minus 21.5 at Maryland. Over under here, 50.5, so about a touchdown higher. Maryland, although not anywhere near the caliber of Indiana, does feel like they are going to try, which is all you can ask for. So I think we go Maryland plus the 21.5 here, in my opinion. It is scary, but again, maybe a fourth quarter backdoor cover here. You know, if you're expected to win by 3 touchdowns, you might not show up for the first few quarters and things could get close here. So I just think this is only the third road game for Indiana. This is a potential spot where Maryland gets up for it. And again, maybe we see it all happen and come together in the fourth quarter. Emory, I see you're not exactly agreeing here with me and you like the number 2 team in the country.
Here's the thing, Kens and Mike. Last week, UCLA was 25.5-point underdogs. UCLA started the game like, oh, yeah, we're going to put up a fight. Then they called timeout. It was like, oh, man, Indiana got hands. And they got blown out. And Indiana's like, yo, we're not making this easy for anybody. We still feel like we are disrespected around the country. We will continue to emphatically show that we are better than you and we are a national title contender. They made sure to blow out UCLA, who has been playing great football up until last week. And we'll see them take advantage, although I'm a big fan of Malik Washington and his prospects moving forward. But this is a true freshman going up against arguably the number 1 team in the country that has a mission, a point to prove. They will get blown out in this ball game. Indiana is not, playing nice with anybody. They're trying to beat the brakes off everyone on their schedule, and Maryland seems to be the next one in line.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both these teams coming off a UCLA game, Indiana coming off a 56-6 win versus them, and then before the bye, Maryland coming off a 20-17 loss to them, which doesn't exactly help my case. But what I will say, Maryland 4-0 against the spread in conference play this season. Mike, I see you're taking a nice creative way at this and kind of avoiding the spread.
Yeah, going to avoid the spread. Just give me Maryland's team total over 13.5. You mentioned that they're well rested coming off the bye and playing at home. How I anticipate this going. I think they're able to get a touchdown in the first half and then they grab a second one in the fourth quarter of this game. And Emory is right about Indiana. They want to blow everyone out. They feel disrespected. They will feel disrespected, probably even if they were able to somehow get a number one next to their name, until they reach that college football playoff again there and have some success. I think they're going to feel disrespected, and I think they're going to run it up. So for me, I just think because they're going to continue to run it up and not take the air out of the ball necessarily and run that clock, there's going to be enough opportunity for Maryland to find the end zone twice in this game, go over 13.5 on their team total.
Yeah, I like that a lot, especially the 13.5 for Wednesday viewers live or listeners. I mean, getting that before it potentially hits 14.5, definitely worth acting now on. Let's go to a 7:30 game in the Big Ten. Number 23 USC, 6.5 point favorites on the road, headed to Nebraska. Now, the fact that USC has squeaked their way into the top 25 might just be the worst nightmare scenario for Matt Rule, who has lost 18 straight games versus AP-ranked teams. Let me say that one more time for the people in the back. Has lost 18 straight games versus AP-ranked teams, 28 straight games versus AP opponents overall. The last win was 2016 versus Oregon. Nebraska 0-11 straight up, 1-10 against the spread in their past 11 versus ranked teams. All of this to say, does anyone want to take USC minus the 6.5, Emory?
Yes, I am. And it's funny because all those great numbers and statistics you brought up about Nebraska is really interesting, because I said this last night. When you hear the conversation about Nebraska, you think they are 1-7, but this is a 6-2 football team. They've actually played some good ball, but I just like the fact that we've seen a balanced offensive attack coming from USC, and I do feel like the matchup here is what we saw versus Minnesota for Nebraska. Look for USC to win up front, move these guys off the ball, generate big plays in the run game, and you won't see the mistakes from Jordan Mailata that you've seen at times from Dylan Raiola. So therefore, I do like USC to go on the road and cover this spread. I just also hate that it's a Big Ten game. This used to be a New Year's Day bowl game, but the fact these guys are in conference, that's another story for another day, but I like them to cover here.
Yes, we can reminisce on the good old days another time here. I'm with you, Emory, on the minus 6.5. A lot of this has to do with Dylan Raiola. Like, to me, still well, he literally is a one touchdown to one interception type of quarterback. And I just don't think that's really going to cut it in a game like this, especially with USC here. So I'm in on USC minus the 6.5, basically for all of the trends I just mentioned. I think there was about 7 of them saying how Nebraska can't cover against ranked teams. Mike, I see you're ignoring the spread again here, another total play.
Yeah, let's go under 59.5 here. I project this more like a 31-24 kind of game. When you look at where USC could be a little vulnerable, it's in a hostile environment like this at night. And as much as Nebraska hasn't necessarily been super relevant of late, their fan base still shows up every single time. And that is something that I think they can lean on and ultimately have a little lower scoring start to this game that brings us under this total. I also point back to Nebraska and some of the spots that they've lost. I think they put up 6 points against Minnesota. It can go really poorly for them at times. And I don't necessarily think that's accounted for here. So I'm going to go under 59.5. Again, 55.5, 56 is where I would have set this number.
Okay, yeah, so getting that 59.5, certainly good value here. All right, Mike's on the under, me and Emory on USC. That rounds out our Big Ten for now. Again, you can always go to SportsLine, get more bets from the crew, but we're going to move on to the Big 12 next. A lot to talk about in this conference. Things are going to get messy when we talk about conference championships and all of those things coming up. So, lots to unpack. We still got more to go, more conferences to talk about, underdogs, etc. We're going to do it all after this. Welcome back to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. Mackenzie Brooks here, Emory Hunt, Mike McClure, making our way through the best bets for Week 10. It is time to hit Big 12 territory. Now, an interesting race right now between Texas Tech, undefeated BYU, Cincinnati sneaking in there when you talk about conference championship play. But still an important game in its own right. Let's talk about Arizona State at Iowa State. Iowa State laying 7.5 at home. A Big 12 championship rematch from last season when Arizona State won. You look at Arizona State this season, all 3 of their losses have come versus unranked teams. They're 2-0 versus ranked teams, which is kind of interesting. Iowa State, again, coming off that 41-27 loss to BYU, which was a really insane game to watch if anyone was watching that here. As far as this Big 12 rematch here, Emory, how do you feel about this?
I don't feel good for Iowa State, man. They got out of the blocks fast against BYU to where it looked like they were going to blow out BYU. And then as the second quarter tended to happen, they were up 24-3 with a minute 52 left in the first half, and they allowed BYU to score. And then BYU went on to run the tables with those guys, and they scored 3 points after that in the second half. So I think this is a situation where one loss becomes two. They'll come into this ball game still reeling from the loss against BYU, and Arizona State will be right there ready to pounce on them and seeing the opportunity. And I like the Sun Devils in here plus the points. I just can't understand how the Iowa State Cyclones got to this point with how well they started the season.
I know. It's a shame. We were high on them early. I was high on them last week against BYU. Was feeling pretty good about that until I wasn't. Mike, how do you feel about this game here?
Pretty similar to Emory here, especially at the number of 7.5. I could make some adjustments and some arguments to get this number maybe at like 5, but I definitely can't get north of a full touchdown here. I get that it's a travel spot and all the things, but I still think these teams are very, very even, particularly when I look at EPA per play on both sides of the ball. I just don't know that Iowa State right now is where they need to be offensively to go win this game by multiple scores, essentially, which is what you're asking for. Essentially at 7.5. So I think that they probably walk away with the win on the home field here, but too many points. Give me Arizona State.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the 7. I'm gonna go Iowa State minus 7.5, and I don't love it. I actually hate it, but I do think with all the injuries we're seeing, I mean, there's injuries everywhere, but Arizona State especially as well, coming off a Houston loss. I mean, I just don't know what this team's really playing for at this point. So there's a chance that Iowa State's looking for pride again on their own home field. I would lean Iowa State minus 7.5. Probably not a bet that is going to be making my board here, but a bet I do feel passionate about is moving on to number 13, Texas Tech, laying 7.5 at Kansas State here. Over under 52.5, projected to be a high-scoring affair. Not many times in my life I like to back Kansas State. This is one of them, because this is when they show up to the season. This is when Avery Johnson shows up to the season. Welcome in. Here they come. They had a dominant win over Kansas. They're really crushing the back half of this season here. And Texas Tech, while I do think the world of them, I think they still can win the Big 12 Conference Championship. This outgaining on the ground, the strong run game that they have, has just gotten a smaller and smaller and smaller gap. We only have them in the SportsLine model projected to outgain Kansas State on the ground by 12 yards. And just seeing the momentum that Kansas State has right now, what makes me want to take them, on top of the fact that Kansas State just owns this rivalry in general. I mean, they've won 8 straight versus Texas Tech. Their last loss was 2015. They're 6-0-1 against the spread in the last 7 games versus Texas Tech. So for whatever the reason may be, and you also have Tech with these injuries and just Kansas State showing up in the back half of the season, I want to take Kansas State. And I won't be saying this much more of the season, but this is a spot. Mike, do you agree with your guys here at Kansas State?
I do. A lot of it is about Kansas State. Some of it about the quarterback situation currently at Texas Tech. They've been beat up. They've managed it pretty well overall. But Kansas State finally looks like the team that you thought you were getting to start the season. 4 consecutive games where they've covered the spread, 34 plus points offensively in each of those games. And then you go back and look at how they lost early this season. They have yet to lose a game by more than 6 points and multiple field goal loss games, the games that they probably should have won. When you look at this team, it's still a team that's also got a pretty good home field advantage in the Big 12 playing in Manhattan. I just think this is a tight, classic, competitive, high-scoring Big 12 game that's ultimately decided by 6 points or less, which happens so frequently in this conference. So I would take the points at 7.5.
Yeah, you make a good point. This conference specifically, when you're getting 7 and a hook, I feel like literally blindly in the Big 12, that's something I want to take. Emory, tell us why we're both wrong.
First, can we get that graphic back up of Kansas State's last 7 times against Texas Tech? Because there's importance right there. And look, it all says Kansas State. But what y'all fail to realize, this is when Texas Tech was staying in Hoboken. Now they're on the Upper East Side, right? They got money now, right? They are legitimately a different program. So none of this matters. for this particular matchup against this particular version of highly rich Texas Tech. And I keep bringing up the money because it matters because they have depth. I think that depth that they have will lend itself to them covering the spread in the second half. And also, they realize because they lost that ball game, they have no more room for error to try to make their case, if not winning the Big 12, but at least to get an at-large bid. So they have to win, and they have to win with style points. But the reason why they will win and cover the spread, because, again, they're staying up on the Upper East Side. They're playing with more than house money, and they're going to do a great job in showing it out there against Kansas State.
Fair enough. You make a good point here. You make a good point. I will say that. But let's move on because I still like Kansas State. What I do like is a ranked-on-ranked game in the Big 12 on the back half of the season. Number 17, Cincinnati at number 24, Utah. Cincinnati tied for first in the Big 12 with number 11, BYU, who they will host later in November. Both of these teams 6-2 against the spread so far. Both of these teams 5-3 to the over. Just food for thought there. But Cincinnati 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games as underdogs versus ranked teams. So that's a situation, again, Cincinnati 9.5-point dogs here on the road, which kind of feels like a pretty large number in my opinion. Emory, would you agree?
And firstly, yeah, listen, there's nothing wrong with staying in Hoboken, but there's levels to this, guys. When you go to an apartment complex on the Upper East Side and you get off on the floor and it says apartment 8 and the whole floor is apartment 8, therein lies the difference, right? So to your question, Kens, I think this spread is a little bit too high. It's an overreaction to what Utah did to Colorado last weekend, right? And this was already 9.5 to begin the week. It's now fallen to 8.5. Utah is not that much better than Cincinnati, if at all. And I do like the Bearcats playing significantly better. Sorsby has played tremendous ball since the last time we saw him in the end of game situation against Nebraska, where he had the awful series of throwing the ball away and throwing it interception. He's been lights out since then. And I think because we have a known commodity offensively with Cincinnati, more so than whether it's going to be the freshman or it's going to be Devin Dampier for Utah, who knows? But I do know Cincinnati feels like they have a chance at the postseason. And here's the big matchup, the marquee matchup they need to make sure they get it done. So I like them plus the points here.
Yeah, and look at that graphic too. Cincinnati, since losing their season opener, they've been 7-1 or 7-0, excuse me. They're undefeated in that play. So Utah has 2 losses and is on the outside looking in. I just think Cincinnati in general having something to play for and playing well, which they've basically been doing all season since that opener here, I think they keep it within a touchdown. I really don't know why this is close to a 10-point spread. I just feel like, again, we talk about Big 12 play. Like, I'll blindly take anyone to cover these spreads when there's just so much parity in this conference and so many of these teams are so close in talent here. Mike, I see you're looking at a total here. We're looking at 55.5. Feels pretty high.
I think it's high here. You've seen teams that have the ability to go put up big numbers, but I think these teams are both good teams, as evident by their ranking. Where Utah really stands out, though, is a strong home field advantage, particularly at night. And it's the defense. I have them as a legitimate top 10 defense in college football. I think that they're able to limit Cincinnati. And while I may not necessarily agree with the 9.5-point spread, it's the defensive side of the ball for Utah that it's creating that 9.5-point spread. So to me, this just projects as a spot where we have both teams kind of living in the 20s. And it's ultimately a competitive, lower scoring game. So I'm under 55.5 here.
Yeah, night game, especially a night game for us over on the East Coast, 10:15 kickoff. It will be for us over here. All right, that's a good wrap on the Big 12 there with a ranked-on-ranked game. We move on next to the SEC, where it just means more, Emory. Up next, after this, we're making our way through the marquee matchups down below. We will see you after this. Welcome back to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. We've made our way through the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12. Time to hit the SEC. We have now this is going to be an interesting. You got me?
Yep, we got you.
Let's go. All right. I was getting a little excited about the SEC. Number 9, Vandy at number 20, Texas. Texas 1.5-point favorites at home, over under 45.5. Now, Vandy, while underdogs in this game, 7-1, excuse me, so far, played 4 ranked teams, losing to just Bama in those. Last season, if we look back at this game, Vandy lost 24-27. Pavia, 2 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, led the team in rushing yards. Vandy 6-2 against the spread so far in the season, while Texas is just 2-6. Now, some interesting situations. We have Arch and concussion protocol, all of those things. Makes it a little bit tricky to attack this potentially here. Emory, how do you want to look at it?
I look at this from a Vandy side of things, and this is another game for them to show that they belong. Just like Indiana, they tend to feel disrespected despite continuing to win and win in impressive ways. Last week, it was more about their defensive effort. In other games, we were talking about the offense and how they've been able to score points with Diego Pavia. So in this game versus Texas, both defenses I expect to show up. So it could be a lower scoring game, but I have concerns about Caldwell coming in. Although he threw the game-winning touchdown against Mississippi State last weekend, we forget that they were getting blown out in that ball game. Even though it was Arch's best game and leading the comeback, I still have some questions about which type of offense we're going to get from Texas. So I do like Vanderbilt to cover this short number because they have to win in order to stay relevant in this playoff conversation.
Yeah, basically a must-win spot for them, which feels crazy to say given their record. But honestly, in my opinion, they're still that like 5th SEC team. And if we get a 5th SEC team, it will be good for them. Mike, how are you feeling about this game?
I just love hearing a 5th SEC team. Emory, you gotta love hearing that comment. I like Texas here, guys, at -1.5. And I know some will call me crazy here. You called me crazy when I loved and bet Texas against Oklahoma in that game. This game projects pretty similar to me in this spot. I'm not worried about the quarterback situation for Texas. I think it's very, very equal. And I think they simply rely on that defense and the home field environment. Look, this is an absolute must-win game on both sides. This is a playoff eliminator. Whoever loses this game is going to be out of the college football playoff. In Texas, though, if they win it, it's now all of a sudden it's another top 10 victory, right? Because you got Vandy sitting 9 here. I think that this is just truly the must-win spot. And I think the best unit on the field is still that Texas defense in a do-or-die spot. So while I love Diego Pavia, I think he's going to make this one interesting and exciting. I ultimately think he tries to do too much against this defense, has that turnover that ultimately changes this football game. So I still think the number should be sitting at 3.5 for Texas. Because I make these teams very, very close. Like this number at 1.5 implies that Vandy is absolutely for sure better on the neutral. I think that that's not the case with the defense and the quality of athletes. So give me Texas here.
Yeah, I'm in on Texas's defense being the best unit on this field right now. So I'm taking the Vandy team total under 21.5. I just don't want to have to deal with that Texas offense and the question marks there. So if you're like me and just want to avoid that, maybe a way to isolate this game is just taking the Vandy team total under, an offense who struggled against Missouri and on the road in general. Let's move on to the best game of the week, the best time of the year. The best tailgate, the redneck tailgate here, biggest tailgate in America. Number 5, Georgia, -7.5, quote unquote, at Florida here. Now, this is the last Jacksonville game we're going to get for a few years. So very sentimental for my Georgia Bulldogs down there, making it happen and having a good time here. Emory, do you think Georgia can take advantage of this head coachless Florida team?
Absolutely. I think this is Georgia all the way. In fact, I just feel like, the SEC should change its whole motto to it just whines more. Because all you hear is whining coming out the SEC about how many teams need to get in, what league is doing this. You never hear anything about the Sun Belt Conference, though, because we just moisturize, drink water, and mind our business, right? That's why we love the Sun Best Conference. But to your Georgia Bulldogs, against this faceless Florida team that lost their head coach, and now they're playing in a situation where they got to, scramble up some pride, scramble up some motivation. But Georgia is looking like they're going to score 30-plus points in this ball game. And will Florida have enough firepower to keep up or keep the pace? I don't think so. This is why I love this number here for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, Georgia looking for their 5th straight win. They've won the 8 of the last 9 against Florida here. Obviously, I think we all think they're going to win this game. Mike, do you also think they cover this spread?
I do. Yeah. I honestly think we should be seeing a double-digit spread. I would personally set it at 10.5, and I'd still be on the Georgia side at this particular spot. You talk about neutral site game. Georgia travels well. They will here for this. Florida, while they've got the athletes. They had a very difficult schedule. I still think some of their rating is being propped up by that win that they had over the University of Texas. When I look at Georgia, though, I think that they're one of the better teams, and I think they continue to get better. That's what Kirby Smart does with teams like this. When you have a quote unquote rebuild and have to take some time to figure it out, this is when they hit their stride. I think they keep the foot on the pedal in this one and pull away. And ultimately, the problem for Florida is going to be if Georgia gets ahead by 10 points in this game, they're going to be so one-dimensional. This Georgia Bulldogs defense is going to be able to tee off and ultimately probably create a defensive score in this game.
Yeah, I like it. Also, Georgia 3-0 against the spread in conference games. Florida 1-6 against the spread versus top 5 teams since 2023. All right, we're running out of time here for the SEC. We'll go quick rapid fire mode here for ranked unranked. Number 18, Oklahoma at number 14, Tennessee. Tennessee 3.5-point home favorites here. Emory, do you like that?
Love it. Points are what Tennessee's MO is. Oklahoma got exposed last week to Ole Miss in terms of geometry not fully being 100%. I think Tennessee wins by double digits.
All right. I like to see that there. Mike, looks like we're looking at a total 56.5, feeling high.
Yeah, look, Tennessee certainly has the ability to push any game over the total, but I set it at 52.5 here. It's ultimately the defensive side of the ball for Oklahoma that I think is still strong enough here. So give me the under.
Yeah, I'm in on the under as well. We will be connected on that one. All right, we're going to move away from the SEC, and we're just going to go to our best bets of the entire slate of Week 10. Floor is yours, and we'll hit some underdogs as well. Nice little sprinkles to make you some money this weekend, all coming up after the break. Welcome back to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. We have made our way through the Power 4 conferences, talking about the best games in those. But now to open the floor for our best bets across college football for this weekend. We can take a quick look at how we did last week as well between the three of us here. I know I split here. Tough to see. I did hit my underdog for those keeping track at home, but I did split on the best bets here. Emory goes 1-1 as well. Mike 2-0 in the SEC, as he typically is, up 8 units on this show. Again, I told you to buy low on the team in those first early weeks, and we're coming back on top with some positive units here. So let's do it again. Everyone gets 2 best bets we're going to talk about, and I just knew that Emory Hunt was not going to leave this show, this 1-hour program, without talking about Georgia Tech football.
Again, listen, we're going to talk about this Yellow Jackets football team until they hoist up the crystal ball. Do they even hold a crystal? No, it's not the crystal ball no more. It's also this trophy that looks like a flame. But they're going to get both of them because they're going to go all the way to the national title game. You heard it here first, guys. So definitely en route to the national championship since 1990, back when Ken Swilling was out there knocking guys' heads off at safety with that big number 1 jersey on with those big shoulder pads. They'll run through Raleigh, North Carolina, and North Carolina State Wolfpack. Lay the 5.5 points. I am not worried about America's team. With America's quarterback, they'll get the job done.
Wow. And you have another more creative play for us as well.
With all the calamity that we have going on in the world, the only thing that feels right is Hawaii being really good in football with an outstanding local quarterback in Micah Elahado throwing the ball all over the yard. Timmy Chang is a head coach. I am shocked that they are underdogs here against San Jose State. Hawaii has already reached bowl eligibility. I think they'll take care of business. I'll take them plus a short number here against the Spartans. They're fighting Tommy Trans out there, but they're going to lose this one against the Rainbow Warriors.
Yeah, people say college football is better when the state of Florida is better at football. I'd argue it's Hawaii. People don't talk about that enough, so I'm glad you shed light on that, Emory. Mike, we're going back to what we know because what we know is working. Going back to the SEC, what are your 2 best bets on the weekend?
Back to the SEC, Ken's. Texas, -1.5. Grab it as soon as you can. I'm seeing 2s and 2.5s in the market. I still think the line should be 3. I don't know if we get it closing there, depending on what news we get in terms of starting quarterback. I personally don't care who starts this game at quarterback for the University of Texas. It's all about the defense and the environment and the spot for me. Vandy has had a fantastic season. It's a do or die must-win game, playoff eliminator on both sides. I ultimately think Diego Pavia tries to do too much in this game. It's a Texas turnover, maybe mid-third quarter, that changes this game, flips the game. But to me, it's all about preventing that Vandy offense. Texas can do enough against a Vandy defense that ranks outside the top 100 in college football. Give me the home field advantage. Give me the Texas Longhorns defense. Would play this all the way to -3. And then next, go ahead. Okay, back to your team. I know you want to jump in when we talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. You can play this at -7 or -7.5. There are 7s at -115 in the market. That is what I have played currently. This to me should be a 10.5 point spread. I would still be leaning that direction on the University of Georgia. I think Florida, while they had a difficult schedule, they had a big win over the University of Texas. They're a little propped up. There's not much to play for at this particular point in the season. However, Georgia, this is what Kirby Smart does. He rounds these teams into form this time of year. I think they pull away in a neutral site environment. I think they're up 10 points in this game, get another defensive stop or a defensive touchdown in this one, and ultimately just cruise to covering the 7-point spread.
Yeah, nothing like it, man. The Georgia-Florida game. I know when we have retired athletes as analysts, we get to show their highlights and the glory days. I wish we could show me at the tailgates because it was a good time, but I don't think that would be appropriate for this television. So we're going to move on to my best bets here. And I'm going to go back to that game we didn't get to talk about too much, Oklahoma-Tennessee, attacking that under. Mike likes it as well here. Oklahoma, on the road, 3-0 to the unders, and just a kind of an under machine on the season. They've learned, especially last week against Ole Miss, is that they cannot find themselves in shootouts, especially with John Mateer not 100%. That's just not a game they're going to win here. So while, yes, Tennessee's offense is fabulous, so is this Oklahoma defense, and I think they will try to take the reins on the tempo of this game, and we're going to go under on that number. And then I'm going to go to Kansas State. I really think they can cover, especially if they're getting 7.5 versus Texas Tech here. Again, this is momentum. What have you done for me lately? Kansas State, again, showing up to the season. This is like when they like to show up. Week 9, week 10, this is when we see peak Kansas State football. Texas Tech, I just feel like they don't have it in the cards to make this a 2-score game here. So I think Texas Tech can win, but I certainly think Kansas State wants to fight and keep this close and potentially ruin Texas Tech at large bid hopes here. All right, those are our 6 best bets of week 10. We're going to move on to some underdog plays here. Again, the rules being plus 150 or higher for your dog of the week. I cashed last week on Ole Miss, but Emory, what do you have for us this week?
Navy begins the varsity part of the schedule, right? They're undefeated right now. They're not ranked because no one's talking about them. No one respected their winning so far in this season. But now here comes the tougher part of the schedule, starting with North Texas. When you have a quadruple option like Navy has with quarterback Blake Horvath, who will look great in sitting next to Diego Pavia and also Haynes King in New York City for the Heisman Trophy, because they're going to beat North Texas and go on a run. They got North Texas, they got Notre Dame, got Army, they got all these big schools. It starts with North Texas. They'll win this one plus 197.
All right. I like to see it. Mike, what do you have for us?
I'll back you on Kansas State. I think there's so many range of outcomes for this potential game in the Big 12, but ultimately what happens most often in this conference, Kens, is just a final possession, 1-score kind of game. And that's kind of how it's been in this series even too of late. So when I look at Kansas State, they're the team now that we thought they might be to start the season. They finally got it clicking offensively with Avery Johnson. They have a big home field advantage here. Texas Tech quarterbacks, they've been banged up, right? And they've managed it well so far. Just a tough time to catch a Kansas State team that's finally playing the way they should have been. So I like Kansas State here to win this one outright plus 220.
I like it. Plus 220 super quick. I'm going to go with the Ponies. I know I'm hyper fixated on them. I do think they could possibly get this done. 12.5-point dogs versus Miami, just to create the chaos of college football and make the college football playoff that much more complicated. So I do think they are alive. Plus 325 as home dogs in this game, hosting Miami for the first time leaving the state of Florida. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure as always. Emory, Mike, thank you so much for your picks. We're back every week, Wednesday at noon on network. If you want more from us, you can always get us on Early Edge podcast. Thank you so much, everyone. Tune into Early Edge Monday through Friday, and we will see you next week.